Hello everybody and welcome to the first ever Successful Minds podcast. Before we even begin, if you're on YouTube, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel and giving this video a like. It will really help out. Today we are actually interviewing our first ever guest, Craig Rispin. He's a business futurist and innovation expert and the world's highest rated keynote speaker on LinkedIn. His expertise is in emerging businesses, people and technology trends and how companies can profit from them and how you can profit from them. This is my first ever podcast, so please bear with me about my questions and how I talk and how I answer things. I'm definitely trying to work on how I talk through each of these episodes, and it's only going to get better and better from here, I can assure you that. So we talk about a lot of great things, and I really think you guys should give it a listen because he just brings up a whole assortment of different information that you definitely should know and definitely take into account when we move into the future. So thank you for listening. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you at the end of this podcast. Anyway, firstly, I really like your studio right there. I like your background and your microphone.
Thank you very much. It's a retro cool microphone from a company called Pile Microphones. Heil. What am I saying? Heil Microphones.
Heil. Yeah.
Heil, yes. And they make the expensive microphones that all the top end podcasters use. They're about $600. You don't need one of those right now, Brad. Yeah. This one was only about $215. It's for retro rockers, and I thought that's retro futuristic. I'll get that.
Yeah, it does look retro. Looks sweet. Okay. Well, firstly, for everyone listening, you weren't always a futurist, so I was wondering, can you just to set it out, can you tell us a bit about where you started in your career and how you became a futurist?
Yes, that's a family story, actually. So my great-uncle Chris, my mother's mother, younger brother, so was a futurist himself, and worked for Royal Dutch Shell, became famous for their scenario planning, of course. If you look into that, they were doing scenario planning, which means you can't definitely tell what's going to happen in the future, but different paths of different results. And they predicted that the price of oil was going to go up to $70 per barrel, which was at that time like inconceivable. But they predicted it and made plans for it when the rest of the oil companies didn't. And so they were ready for it and really succeeded through that. And that's why scenario planning became so popular within corporations. So that's my great uncle Chris worked there and introduced me to his famous futurist friends through his network. Introduced me to Arthur C. Clarke. I got to meet Ray Bradbury in Bermuda. And so all these famous authors that were futurists and inventors. A lot of people think that Arthur C. Clarke was just a futurist that wrote 2001 and invented the Space Odyssey 2001. But he was an inventor as well and an engineer and created things and came up with the idea of the space elevator as well. They're still working on that. There's research for the materials that we would need to send a cable out to a satellite that's out in geosynchronous orbit, run a cable out there so you could just push elevators up.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that. Yeah, is that like the giant kind of tower thing too? Yeah, it's just, I'm sure someone's going to figure that out. Maybe the Chinese, I heard they were.
There's a competition. Yeah, they are. And India as well, their space race. And NASA has a research competition, and uni students are competing in other teams from around the world to develop the material for a space elevator. So if you look for space elevator competition, you can find some pretty cool videos. And that geosynchronous orbit that's used for weather satellites, communications satellites, were renamed in Arthur C. Clarke's honor before he passed in 2008. So it's called the Clarke orbit. The Clarke orbit. Yeah, it was his idea So that's my connections to satellites.
Yeah, I can see. And would you have any idea of when that is going to come around?
Well, what they're developing, they need a material that's strong enough and not conducting, actually, because it could spin around, and the friction from the air, it would develop a lot of static. They're thinking, oh, maybe we could use that for energy, but it could be really dangerous as well. So they're trying to develop new materials using a concept from another futurist, Buckminster Fuller, an architect and futurist. Yeah, I got to see his lectures when I was young, because I was growing up in Southern California, and my family would drive me down to go to his open lectures that he was giving at University of California, San Diego. And he didn't do it in a classroom. He did it out in the open air. And so you may have seen his inventions, which are the geodesic domes, all those domes that you see that don't have any columns, like they've got over the sports fields in Melbourne. Yeah, and other places. And so that's called a geodesic dome, and he came up with that idea. And the materials, the connection to Arthur C. Clarke and the idea of the space elevator is NASA thinks the most likely material that will be used to create a cable to go out to those space elevators will actually be based on carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes are these little nanoparticles. They're designed in the shape of a geodesic connection. So what they call buckyball, in honor, in honor of that futurist, Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, so it seems like you got to become a futurist to get some things named after you.
Yeah, quite a few things named.
You got anything named after you yet?
Not for me. One of my mentors said, if you're a futurist, no one really believes you or acknowledges you until you've really got a lot of gray hair.
So what did you, when you said your mum's brother, how old were you when you first met this futurist and you became interested?
I was 10. It was my grandmother's younger brother. So my great uncle Chris, and he'd lived through the Second World War and hung out with Arthur C. Clarke. That's how he knew him, because Arthur was on one of these secret teams in England. There was lots of secret teams, like the people that are trying to crack the code for the Enigma, but there was another secret team, and they were developing, a bunch of engineers developing over the horizon radar. What a great metaphor for futurism. What's coming over the horizon. And the way that it works is it bounces it off the ionosphere, so you can literally see what's coming over the horizon. It gave them an extra 6-minute warning before the bombers were coming from Germany to bomb London and other places. Gave them a 6-minute warning. They could all get into their bomb shelters. So that was the idea behind that. And Arthur C. Clarke and my great uncle were on that team. They weren't the only ones, of course. 1,500 or 2,000 men and women were on this team, I guess, I was told. And so it was a big secret project that is continued here in Australia. So we have over-the-horizon radar bases protecting our coast, seeing what's going on. You can go to Darwin, just outside Darwin, and you see these big, huge towers, very thin, not big, heavy ones, but very thin towers holding up these very thin wires. And if you don't know what those are, that's over-the-horizon radar protecting our northern northern extremes, all the way up there in Arnhem Land. They can look over Arnhem Land. Arnhem Land's this big area. It goes to the right, the northernmost tip of Australia. Well, that radar can go all the way up to Papua New Guinea. So that's how far it can see.
And it can, do the science and...
It's science, and also, they can see all these illegal fishing boats coming in. Because
I doubt we're looking for bombers anytime soon.
No, we don't want to be invaded.
Yeah, it's all dark.
by Indonesia.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. They're very friendly people, but if you ever saw that movie where they talk about Australia getting invaded, what was it called again? After the war, something like that. It was it was a young adult book, and they made a movie out of it, and they were like, this sort of Asian country invades us. The idea was it was after the war, I think it was. I don't remember. It was a little after my time. I was a bit old for it, but my kids watched it as a movie, and it was like this sort of kind of like Asian threat. And I guess they were trying to make out that Indonesia or Papua New Guinea was going to invade. Yeah. And I'm telling you that's not on the cards. Well, not right now, at least.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know that movie. What was the I heard you say, what were they called? They weren't futurists back then. Was there another word?
Well, in the UK, they referred to futurists of futurologists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or future philosophers. And H.G. Wells, who wrote The Time Machine, he lobbied government that they should have in every university a department of futurology. So that's where the word came from. And he was also a pacifist, H.G. Wells. And H.G. Wells also published through a book publisher, the very first published board game. We had board games going back centuries before that, all the way, we know the board games in Egypt and so on. But his was the first one that was published that was a simulation board game, the simulation of war called The Tiny War. And it was published, very popular, and it was the first. With the reason that he did that, you think, why would a pacifist do that? H.G. Wells, why would he do that in the 1860s? Well, he wanted to show that there's no winners in war. And so what you do, you play the game, and then you count up how many troops that you lost, and how many civilians you lost, and how many cities you lost. And your opponent would do that. You add it all up. And then it would ask you to open this card, and it would ask you a question. What did you really win? Did you really win? Mm-hmm. And it was trying to get young people to realize there's no winners in war. No winners in war.
Wow.
Yeah. So these early futurists, the only way they really could make any money was do their scenario planning and think about the future and turn it into fiction, which became science fiction. And then the first movies made were science fiction movies. So they took Jules Verne from the Earth to the Moon, Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon, and one of the first movies, you can see it on YouTube, is called The Man in the Moon, and they have this big cannon, and they fire. The people get into this missile. They fire the cannon. It hits the man in the moon in his eye, and it's from really, really early. And you think about today, you think about the superhero and science fiction movies that we have, they are the biggest movies, right?
Yeah.
And they are inspired by futurists. I can give you one really good example, is Minority Report.
Oh, yep, I've seen that.
Yeah. And so that was the whole look and feel and everything that came from Minority Report. Spielberg took 6 futurist friends of mine away on a weekend and said, tell us what 2050 is going to look like. So in the room were Peter Schwartz from the Institute for the Future in San Francisco, and also someone that I met, another futurist. His name will come to me in a minute, but he's a lecturer down at Newcastle Uni, and lectures on the future of design. And he's worked on all sorts of science fiction movies, doing the design of science fiction movies. And on Back to the Future Day, we were both speaking at this charity event. And I said, when I met him, I said, his name will come to me in a minute. We'll put it in the show notes or something. But anyway, yeah. I said, happy Back to the Future Day. And he laughed at me and he said, of course you would know that, Craig, fellow futurist, but I'll tell you a funny story that's absolutely true. He said, you can look this up on IMDb. he said, I work a lot in movies. I said, yeah, I looked you up. And he said, I do all the pre-visualizations of these. He did Superman, and he worked on the Minority Report and so on. I said, how'd you get into that? And he said, well, guess what? My dad knew Steven Spielberg, and he designed the DeLorean for Back to the Future. Oh. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, so I got, a family connection, get into the movie business. How do you make money if you're a futurist? You're thinking about these things. You want to see them put into real life, visualize what they're going to look like and so on. And so that was my connection to Back to the Future and the futurist that was in the room. But you think about Minority Report, they really saw the future. The things that we have in our world today, the voice recognition, image, face recognition, which is creepy in China, but other places it's used for good purposes, and it's used for for emergencies in China as well. So good for some good purposes as well, but also some kind of creepy purposes as well. But we can get into some creepy use of facial recognition here in Australia. Just go to any casino and they're face tracking you. But anyway, that technology that you see, and self-driving cars, of course. But that movie was a long time ago, and they did the pre-visualization and the thinking about it years in advance. But this is what I say, what futurists do. We look to the future. We ask, what would the preferable future be to try and move the world forward to a better place? But we also try and produce things that warn people about what could happen if things go haywire, and give them a chance to see these things and ask the question, what future do we want? So that's our purpose. And you look at what's that's come out of the Minority Report or whatever, a sci-fi movie, and I say that half of what futurists do is look and forecast, but they also suggest. They suggest things. So if you put out a movie like Minority Report, what happens? All these young people that want to become engineers are like, let's do that thing out of Minority Report. Let's do it where we can control the computer with our hands. And then those engineers go to work for Nintendo, and they create the Nintendo Wii or the Xbox controllers that you could just wave your hands around and so on. All those engineers were inspired by these movies that futurists created. So they inspired the future. They didn't predict it. So I think half of everything that happens happened not because they predicted it, but they predicted it, became a suggestion, somebody made it, they go, there you go, I was right.
Yeah, it's full circle in that case. I didn't realize futurists and movies were so, well, at least sci-fi movies were so close tied together. And then when we go back, and I'm sure now, futurists and inventors seem to be very similar.
Very close.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah,
have you
very close. Yeah, and there's all sorts of futurists. We have more than 20,000 members of the World Future Society that's been around since 1966 when I was born. I got involved in when I was 11, and this is a great community. It was small then, but it's really big now, and you got futurists of everything working in every area that you could expect, and there's some that you don't, but there's you've got about a third that are from government and NGOs, non-government organizations, not-for-profits, that sort of thing. We got a third that are in academia and research, and about a third from the commercial world, and that's where I come from. Yeah. And you get futurists of air travel I've worked with, futurists of medical technology, futurists of nursing, futurists of food, futurists of robotics. Yeah. Every single area, every industry seems to have their own futurist. I met at the World Future Society, I met this lady, and I said, what kind of futurist are you? And she said, I'm a color futurist. I said, what? You forecast colors? She said, I do. And I said, that's incredible. That's fantastic. And there is a color company, the biggest in the world, that standardizes colors, and that's called Pantone. Every company logo in the world gets listed as that's Pantone blue 232, and you know that that's the right blue for your logo, and so printers can get it right. So all printers know, all brand people know the Pantone colors. So so what she does is she's working for Pantone now, and she does the color of the future. So every year it's the color of 2019, the color of 2018. And so you should do that. Look up Pantone. Color future. And and I said, well, who buys your research? And she said, all the car companies for paint colors, all the designers, floor coverings, wall coverings, furniture, you name it. She's all these companies buy my research. And I guess she was so good that she's now working for the biggest color company in the world. So that goes to show you there's a futurist of everything.
Absolutely. She must be. I thought we had every color, but I guess you can do some suggestions. I've totally forgot that there was even more than thousands of futurists. Would you say you're that triangle of people, technology, and what was it?
Yeah, I'll show it to you.
People, technology, and business. That's it.
Yeah, I call this the areas of my expertise. So the areas of my expertise are technology trends and how things are changing, business trends and how things are changing, and people trends and how those are changing. And the intersections of these is where it gets really interesting. So you, for instance, look at the intersection between business and people. People are really reevaluating the role of work in their lives right now. And I can see this because I work with many chief executives, and they say, Craig, I've got these young millennials, and they're asking me difficult questions. They're asking me, what's my purpose to society? And I'm like, my purpose to society is to fund the shareholders' wallets. Craig, why do I need a purpose now? And I say, well, you really do, don't you? He says, it's incredible. He said, it's a whole change. And I said, yes, it's inspiring, isn't it? Well, yeah, inspiring in some ways, Craig, but difficult. This is what I hear all the time. And then you look at the intersection of technology and people, and it's life sciences, the shift in what's happening in this fourth industrial revolution, the new economy that we're moving into. They say at the World Economic Forum, this shift of technology and how it influences people, the fourth industrial revolution, the big shift that we're going to see there is not just that technology changes, but technology changes us as humans.
Yeah.
And that we see that already. There's millions of people alive with pacemakers embedded in their chests. And they're cyborgs already, aren't they? Because they wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for that machine in their chest. And that's just the start of it. That's millions of people already out there. So the next stage is going to be tiny little machines that you inhale. So you'll inhale these machines, and it will go through your blood. They're will be smaller than viruses, and eventually smaller than red blood cells, and eventually even smaller than that. Tiny little micro nano machines that will be within our blood and measuring our health full time, communicating across the wireless connections and telling us, oh, you need to go to hospital today, Craig, so you don't have a heart attack tomorrow.
Oh my God. And where do you get this information from? Where do you find?
Well, I get it from my community. So my community is constantly publishing things. So one way, if you'd like to see what's going on, you could use Twitter. So you could go to Twitter, and there on Twitter, there are some lists of futurists. And I'm on quite a few of those lists, and I've got lists that I follow. One list has over 860 futurists on it now. And I subscribe to that list, and I have an app on my phone called Flipboard, very popular app. And on Flipboard, I can follow Twitter lists. And so I've got my Twitter lists, and what it does is, for instance, just in the news yesterday was the Stratosphere plane, the world's biggest plane, was launched. Mm-hmm. Yeah, And it was their test flight. And that was out in the Mojave Desert, in the testing grounds there, where they also have a spaceport. And it went up. And so about 600 out of the 800 futurists tweeted that out. But Flipboard saw that was really popular, put it on the top list of the articles I should look at. And so it's sort of, does filtering and raising up. Yeah. And then you got like a personalized newspaper made for you by your colleagues, your fellow futurists. You don't have to be a member. You could do this yourself. I urge my chief executives to get Flipboard and subscribe to future magazines on that, and find those lists. And of course, there are very specific futurists. So if I'm working the food industry, I do a lot of work in the food industry. I'll say, look for the food futurists, find them on Twitter, follow them, and then bring that into your Flipboard. And then you can, while you're having your morning coffee, have a personalized newspaper, just like we've seen in science fiction. We've got it. It's called Flipboard. And instead of just the bad news that we get in the media, we get the great news of how wonderful things are happening in the world that are moving society toward a preferable future.
And is this a free app?
Yeah, Flipboard is free.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's a great app. Yeah, it's a great app for finding things that are positive rather than the negative that you see in the media.
Alright guys, so my internet right here actually cut out for a minute, so there was a little bit of time where I was gone, but I came back and we just started the interview back where it left off.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that, so let's pick up the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what I was about to ask is, you already covered it with the app that I've already forgotten the name of, but I was
Flipboard.
Flipboard, that's it. How does one think like a futurist?
Okay, so there's many different ways that futurists use to think about the future. But to get started with, you'll have to look over the horizon, do an environmental scan. And when I was growing up as a futurist, I had futurists telling me, you need to look in different areas and what's happening, not just in your own area of specialty. So go into a newsagent, go to the magazines, and just randomly choose one. And make it really random, like choose the bottom left one at on the back aisle or something like that. And so, for instance, you might pick up Cat Fancy magazine. Yes, there used to be a magazine called Cat Fancy. Yes. And read through it. Read through it with what they call naive eyes, like it's brand new to you. And it would be if it's a new industry, of course. But, start asking yourself the question, what's happening with pets, what's happening with cats, and what's happening with people, and how important. And so right now, for instance, cats and dogs, very important to people, more important now than ever before. And if you think about that, why is that? And you start connecting the dots. And so you start connecting the dots. Why are they so important? Why do people treat them like children? And for many reasons. But probably one of the biggest is these days is for cats and dogs. Many of them are in what we call single-person households. And here in Australia, single-person households is approaching 25%. So 25% of people living alone.
And how many was that?
Almost 25%. It's 24%. And the people living alone in their households, and so they want companionship, and if they don't have human companionship, they get what I call ugly dogs. Lots of ugly dogs. The pugs started the trend, and so they call them pugly dogs. and cats, of course, and that's related to what's happening right now. A lot of lonely people, and it's not because of technology that's driven us apart. It's, we live in a pretty affluent society, and a lot of people live alone, not by choice. They're left alone, unfortunately. They lose their family, through people getting old, and then they end up staying in a house by themselves. And increasingly, the government here in Australia is trying to keep people in their home because they want to stay in their home because they get sicker when they're in aged care or going to hospital. And so we're doing a lot of medical treatments at home now for older people. And a lot of these older people are living by themselves. And also there's younger people living by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that you just start looking around at different things instead of looking at the same thing all the time. And what I say is stop looking at the news. They are in a business where they just want clicks. They just want ratings. They just want to sell advertising. And so what do? They publish the terrible news. And when there isn't terrible news in your town, they'll say, terrible news. A terrible thing happened in this Uber all the way in India, right? And so they're just looking for the worst stories all around the world. And you can tell when it's a slow news day because they're not telling you what's happening in your backyard. They're telling you what's happening on the other side of the planet.
Random.
And so instead, like Flipboard, you can follow a topic. So it will ask you when you download the app, what's your passion? So put in future. Put in future as your passion, and it will automatically go and find articles for you that are about the future. And just flip through it when you're having your morning coffee or tea or whatever you like, glass of water, and just flip through it for 20 minutes. And this will be like you went to the news agent, you picked up a magazine, started reading it from a different area you don't know anything about. And so that's the environmental scan. What's happening? What's happening out there, right? Do the environmental scan. And then you start
out again.
Yeah, so that's...
I thought I cut out for a second. Sorry.
That's right. That's the environmental scan that you're doing. You're looking at different areas and what's going on. And the more and more you read, the more and more you'll start connecting the dots. And when you start connecting the dots, you can use models like scenario planning. You can say, well, if this is happening and this is happening, so for instance, pet ownership is going up. It's not going down. More people are living alone. It's not going down. What does that mean in the future? What does that mean in the future? And so you can have a scenario. In the future, there'll be two types of family. There'll be human families and there'll be human and pet families.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
And you can see it. All these dog-friendly cafes that are popping up. I don't know if you've seen it, but they're all over the place now.
Oh, not my area yet, but
really
I'm far away from the city. So,
well, I bet it happens more in the country areas than it does in the city areas.
Yeah, bring a horse in.
Bring a horse in. Well, not yet, but who knows?
Definitely. So, Flipboard. What about besides magazines? I'm not sure how many people are grabbing magazines and Flipboard. Where else could people be looking?
Well, there's a great resource, a university, one of the world's newest universities is called Singularity University. And Singularity University started by 6 of my futurist friends. And they deliver corporate programs, they deliver education for graduate students, or for people just interested in helping the world be a better place. And their charter is to use these exponential technologies that are driving the world forward to solve some of the world's biggest problems. Basically, they're asking people to come along and share ideas of how they would help 1 billion people, which I think is a great motivation and a lot of great purpose, and motivates a lot of people. And they have a website, Singularity Hub, HUB, and they publish all of their talks for free. They publish reviews of futurist books for free. They've got a lot of content there. You could add that to your Flipboard feed as well, so you can add the Singularity Hub.
Singularity, yeah.
Yeah, Singularity Hub. Because Ray Kurzweil, who's the number 2 person at Google. So there's Larry and there's Sergey, and the number 2 person head of engineering overall is Ray Kurzweil. Kurzweil is the champion, not the inventor of the idea, but the main champion of the singularity that says that technology is going to get as smart as us or smarter than us by 2040, 2050, about then. and that we will merge with technology. And that's what they call the singularity. And he's the main proponent of it. I'm not a huge proponent of it. I think that technology is going to complement humans. It's not going to merge with us. But yes, I guess if you want to become Borg, I guess that's a good idea. If you want to have a go, but we've got human history. You look back in human history. Humans use technology. The first technology we used was fire. And that technology helped us to pre-digest our food, and it made us smarter because we wouldn't have to use as many calories because we're pre-digesting our food by cooking it, and it made our brains bigger. So actually, the very first technology changed us as humans, and these new technologies will change us as humans, but it's not going to be creepy, weird. It's going to be, this is a tool that can help me, just like a computer can help you, or your smartphone can help you.
So you're less of a believer of it being part of you. It's more a tool.
I think it's a tool, and we'll wear jewelry that are attachments for the various things that you'd like to do. So you've got your sports glasses, and they've got the stats of what's happening and communicating, right? You got your sports glasses. Ladies can wear earrings, and it's their phone and so on. I predicted a long time ago that technology would become jewelry, and jewelry is the trend when it comes to technology these days, because look at Apple. Apple's really becoming a design company.
And AirPods everywhere. So in that case, what do you think the earliest exponential technology to drastically change the world will be? Because we have 8 of them. Maybe I should list them out for everyone listening. Number 1, infinite computing. 2, sensors and networks. 3, robotics. 4, 3D printing. 5, synthetic biology. 6, digital medicine. And 7, nanomaterials. And 8, AI. So which of those do you think is going to be early?
Well, the earliest right now, and it's been a long time coming, is artificial intelligence, and we've been working on this since the 1970s. Actually, the autofocus that are on cameras was really the first application. They called it fuzzy logic, and it was, how do humans focus on things? They go beyond the focus, they go before the focus, they find the in between that's in focus. So they worked out how humans focus cameras, and they first put that into cameras in the 1970s. But these days, what I'm showing people time and time again is you can take any business and add plus AI. So dentistry plus AI, a food plus AI. Everything plus AI right now is really hot, and it's early days, but the early examples that we've got are pretty incredible, really, really incredible and world-changing. And so here's a perfect example, radiology plus AI. So we have scans now that you can go and get scanned, and those scans are read by an algorithm, AI, instead of a human. And that's good because humans make lots of mistakes. And when it comes to breast scans, we think that the mistakes that the humans are making reading those scans are upwards of 50%. And you don't want to have a breast scan be 50% wrong. And so what they do is they have algorithms now that look at those, try to identify if there's cancer there, and they can be really tiny, down to like 1 millimeter, right? And your earliest detection is better on things like that. And so the algorithm finds that much better now than a human. We know that we saved lives because of Watson, IBM's AI, that they diagnosed a very rare form of cancer to one patient and saved their lives because if they were treated another way, they would have killed them. So we've got these early results now, but it's just early days. You imagine what's going to happen in the next 20 years, everything plus AI. So cars plus AI, self-driving cars, radiology plus AI and scans, and the environment plus AI. Wow, what if we could solve the environmental problems we have by applying an exponential technology like AI? What we can do, and there's all sorts of apps. We've got Siri on our phone. We've got Google Google AI, and most of these tools are free. There are online courses that show you how to do it, and people are figuring out new tools all the time.
So you see, sorry to interrupt. So you see AI again as more of a positive, because I know a lot of people are fearful of AI, and I think in your, I believe it was you show it a lot, the Did You Know in 2028 video, and I think there was a quote I got that 50% of jobs will be overtaken by artificial intelligence. In a business sense, what do you think employers will be looking for in employees once AI starts coming in?
Well, they are, and we know that that jobs will be not only eliminated, but mostly they're going to be radically changed. So it's going to be like job plus AI, right? And it doesn't mean that they're going to be that these algorithms are going to completely replace humans, because let's give an example of the radiologists. The reason they were making so many mistakes was they were looking at so many scans and their eyes were getting tired, right? And one looks like the other, one looks like the other. But with the algorithm, it can do very quickly. But it detects something, it doesn't know what it is. They kick it out to the human. The human's better at pattern recognition than AI is right now. And it goes, oh, this is something else, or this is something we need to look at. And so it's complementary to humans. It doesn't replace humans. And this is I think it's complementary. And I was speaking at a conference recently, and I said there were executive assistants, and I said there are all these AI tools for setting appointments, for finding this, and doing all these things that that executive assistants do. I said, you could become a superhero. You could become a superheroine. You use these AI tools and you'll look incredible. And that's what the new jobs are. These aren't tools to replace you as an EA. You could be, a superhuman by using these tools. And so this is what I'm trying to encourage people to understand, is that you could be a much better doctor through AI. You could be a much better pilot through AI. You could be a much better financial planner through AI. I'm a better futurist because of AI. So I went looking for an AI tool, and I found one called Shaping Tomorrow. And what it does is it helps people, shapingtomorrow.com. Started by another futurist by the name Mike Jackson. And from the UK, and he developed this great tool. It's been around for a long time now, and it does environmental scans in seconds. It uses AI, and their AI is called Athena, and Athena goes out across all these different websites and looks for anything that talks about future trends in any industry. So I've got a new client, and they're in the energy business, and they said, Craig, can you come and talk to us about the future of energy? What do you think the future of energy is going to be, especially in regional areas? Because they're the energy company that's out in Western Australia, not in the metro area, out in the country area. They say they're the biggest distributor in land area of power. And they said, where do you see power going in the future? And I said, can you give me 2 seconds? And I went to Shaping Tomorrow, and I typed in energy, and I got, like that, 22,000 future trends on energy. And I said, I'll just send you this. I got 22,000 data points. I'll summarize them for you if you hire me, and I'll bring it to you and give you the whole detail and everything. And they said, Craig, that's incredible. That kind of thing takes us months to do, our visioning process. And I go, well, you're clearly doing it wrong. Right?
Yes, you're definitely using AI to your advantage.
Well, so anybody can do this. You just have to go looking for it. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
And I can see that you're... Sorry, you go on.
No, but I'm going to say, what you could do, you could be part of the future. And I think when we were first talking, I was saying you should, do a nano degree. Do a nano degree. A nano degree is a mini degree that was designed by Sebastian Thrun. Thrun designed the self-driving car for Google. He found he couldn't train enough students at Stanford University that Google wanted to employ. And now every car company in the world is a self-driving car company. They need hundreds of thousands of engineers. And you can go on to, if you search for self-driving car nano degree, you'll find it at Udacity. and you can do a course in 6 months, and you can do a self-driving car, and you could do a self-flying plane as well. Do those 2 courses. And what I would say is, if you'd like to get into this booming area where billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars are going into it, and they're not really teaching at university what you need to know, do this nano degree for not very much money, and get yourself a remote control car, and put a Raspberry Pi on it, and put your AI software that you wrote, and put some sensors on it. Well, you get these sensors cheap off Alibaba places, and go for an interview at Ford, at Audi, at Subaru, wherever you want, and bring your self-driving car along, your little remote control car. Put it on the floor and let it go, I wrote that software. I know how to do self-driving car, and pull out your drone and fly it around, and it doesn't bump into anyone because it's got AI in it. And you say, I wrote that software. Make sure you did improve, because people will check those things. They can check it on the internet that you wrote the code. And imagine you've got a brand new career, and you could do that in a year. You could do that in a year. And we couldn't do this before. You'd have to go and do a degree for 3 or 4 years, and then you get out in the marketplace and realize that things are moving so quickly, your degree is now useless.
Absolutely. And that kind of is the question of, for you as a futurist, and you talk to a lot of companies, I think I saw it was IBM, BH, Bilton, are companies now changing the way they are hiring employees?
They are. So BHP is a perfect example. So they realized that that young people have changed, and so they started recruiting people in a different way. And they developed a game, a simulation, kind of like SimCity, right? But the simulation was a simulation of their coal going on to what they call loaders and distribution lines and so on, going down to the port and getting put onto ships. And you played this game. And this area of simulation, inspired by H.G. Wells, with his simulation, this new area of simulation is called serious gaming. Serious gaming. Yeah, and so what they do is they bring young people in and say, play this game. Let's see if you can play this game. This is how you get your points and so on. And so you play a game, right? You play a game, and see if you can get a top score. And then what they say to the potential recruits are, hey, you won, Brad. You won. You were a top. And guess what? That's how we control our systems now.
That's amazing.
That game is how we're controlling our systems. Would you like your first job to be playing a game? Because they figured out that young men especially play a lot of games. Young women especially play a lot of games. And why not run their company like playing games, but serious games? Yeah. Serious games. And of course, they rate you on how efficient you are in these jobs. So it's like a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you put a nice 3D interface on it, and all of a sudden it is a game, but you're getting paid to play games.
That's pretty. That's kind of like Ender's Game, that movie or whatever. And do you see more companies doing this?
Oh, yeah. Serious gaming is a worldwide movement. In fact, I've worked with CEOs who've designed their entire company under the idea that we have a whole generation that have grown up playing games, and I need to run my company like using those skills. Right? Using the skills that they've developed. So he runs his company based on the skills that they've developed playing games.
Do you see with, we're going to have to, just because I need to kind of ask this, we go back to the Udacity part, because do you see universities anymore as worth it? I know that people still say a lot, being a lawyer and a doctor, you still have to go through university. And then I kind of researched before on Udacity, and it said it's great, there's nano degrees and stuff, but it's only kind of recognized for the IT and data analytics program. It's not like accredited. Do you see, how can people who don't want to be in data and stuff but don't want to go through university, can they still use Udacity? And is there a way eventually that it can become accredited in the future?
Well, these days, how you become recognized for your field is the work that you publish online. And so it's your social proof, and less so, and I would say industry certifications and less so degrees, because things are moving so quickly. So my clients that I'm working with, Cisco and IBM and Cognizant, these are really big technology companies, Oracle, and what they're saying is they're not really teaching at university what we want our graduates to know. Oracle doesn't hire anybody from university and puts them into engineering because they say they haven't learned anything. They actually stick them in sales first for a year, and so they become sales specialists. And what I'm seeing, and I know that I work with a lot of recruiting firms, and I ask them, how prevalent is it now that industry certification is becoming more important than a college degree? And about half the hands went up in this big audience I was speaking to, or an audience of recruiters.
Wow.
And so that's already happening. And we also know that, sadly, in the United States, we don't know what the number is here, but I suspect it's as high, if not higher, according to the Foundation for Young Australians, that about 60% of jobs, you can't really train for in university. And this is what we're seeing is that about 45% of college graduates in America are underemployed because they've ended up doing degrees that no longer apply. And I know because I speak to the bosses and I ask them the question, are they training students with the skills that they need in the modern workplace? And 90+% say no. When I ask students, did you learn the skills that you needed to compete in the marketplace? Most of them tell me no. But when we ask teachers, are you teaching our students? And they say the skills that they need for the future. And they say, yeah, we're doing pretty good. And I think there's a disconnect there somewhere, a disconnect between employers, the government, teachers, parents, students, and industry. They're just not communicating well. And we're not the only country in the world that has this issue. Canada has this issue. There's one country that does it really well, the best in the world, where they have the lowest youth employment in the world is in Germany. Germany, yeah. And it's because every single job goes into an internship. So every single, only about 15% do an academic degree. So only about 15-20% need an academic degree. So you get a business degree and you combine that, or any other field, agriculture, whatever, manufacturing, whatever. But, you start in business straight away and you do your studies as well.
I see.
And their economy is the only sane one in Europe. And I can't believe that people don't look over the horizon, see what's making sense other places, and say, why don't we bring that system here to Australia? How come no one's talking about this? It's ridiculous. We've got great examples just over the horizon that we can bring here, but people don't. I just don't understand it. It's crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is within your field, but how do you think we can upgrade our educational system?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I've done a lot in education.
Yeah.
And I never get invited back because I bring up very difficult subjects. And they seem to like me personally, but I was working with a university, and all the top people were there. The vice chancellor and all the heads of subjects were there. The room were full. It was the complete management team for the entire university. And I was saying the disconnect between what, my contacts are in the commercial world and what they were doing. And I said, quick, there's somebody in the room that's responsible for tracking this number. It's your success number. And the number is, tell me how many of your students successfully are employed in their area that they chose 2 years after they graduate. This is your success. I mean, and I said, point to the person that's responsible for that. And do you know that no one in the room was responsible for that?
I can believe it because I've been through uni and that's wild. So did you get what the success was?
What their success was, really, it's how many students they get, and how many students they get is all about fees, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's their success. Not whether you're successful, not whether you graduate, not whether you work in your field. And you can't run a business like that. You cannot run a business like that, right? Udacity can't say, do our course, but we're not sure you're going to be employed. I mean, everybody's going to post, I went to Udacity and I didn't get employment, right?
Yeah.
What people are mostly blogging about is, I went to Udacity, then I had to do this, and I uploaded stuff to GitHub, and I also published on Tableau, and I went to some networking groups, and I did some informational interviews, and then I got hired. This is what I'm saying.
So what you're kind of saying is, even if Udacity is not accredited to particular subjects, you can still use it to learn because it's actually an educational site.
Yeah, and don't you think you'd be hired if you walk into Ford and you get your self-driving car? Yeah,
absolutely.
You'd get hired, wouldn't you? And they'd say, where did you learn this? You say Udacity. And what you can see is the companies, the reason it's so cheap is that companies are sponsoring Udacity. And the reason they're sponsoring Udacity is they want employees that come out of Udacity. And so just look at who the sponsors are. It's Ford, it's Mercedes-Benz, it's BMW, it's Toyota, it's Tableau, right? It's the companies, it's Google. And the reason they're sponsoring it is they go to Udacity and say, give us your top 10%. And what Udacity worked out a deal because they figured out they couldn't charge top fees. So the deal that they have is that the companies pay them 10% of the employee's starting wage if they get hired from the Udacity program. So it doesn't come out of your package, and they're not paying a 30% recruiting fee. They're paying 10%. And so they get like a grant back to Udacity. And I have to say the quality of the courses are getting better all the time. I've been watching it for a number of years, and they were pretty good in the beginning. They're like Hollywood production quality video now. Really, really good. Really.
It's only like 6 weeks, was it, for a whole course?
No, about 6 months. About 6 months.
That's
2 courses you could do in 3 months each, sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Way cheaper too.
And I would say this is what I'm seeing, more and more industry certifications taking over degrees.
Industry. Yeah. Well, either way, if Udacity actually lets you learn, because I can guarantee it probably lets you learn more than university, I think that's what I've got for university. And then because let's jump back to I forgot what it's called.
Yeah, exponential trend.
Exponential, that's it. This is a big question in my head. And it's, I believe, a tagline in what you say. How can people profit from these exponential trends that are coming in the future?
So how you can profit from them, the best way is to know what's coming, right? So to know first, take action. That's what I'm saying. Take action. Go do a course. Make a self-driving car, take action. So you're in the first group of people, that are doing it. And then you'll profit from it because you'll get a great starting salary. Guess what the starting salary for a self-driving car engineer is right now?
Starting, I'm going to say 90K.
90K? Not even close. You're almost half off. $160,000 US.
Starting. Is that from someone?
That is the starting salary. That's the average starting salary.
Yeah, I have seen, because it kind of relates to the growing profitable skills to have. This kind of goes hand in hand with exponential technologies.
It does. And so this list that is not my list. I have a similar list, but this list that I'm going to show you here, I'm going to share my desktop and put that slide up for you. So this list is from a fantastic futurist by the name of Peter Diamandis, who wrote the book Abundance: The Future is Better Than You Think.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, he identifies the 8 exponential technologies most likely to benefit mankind and help us with these world biggest problems. And so he identifies the world biggest problems and gives you examples. Now, Bill Clinton suggested that you should read it. Bill Gates suggested that you should read it. So you really should read it.
Absolutely.
And this list, I mean, it's just incredible what's happening in each of these areas. And first, artificial intelligence can apply to every job that's got knowledge. But synthetic biology, incredible things happening. I'll give you an example. This is a little bit of DNA, customized DNA that's been modified to store data. That tiny little smear in the bottom there, just a single gram of this customized DNA can store 1 billion terabyte drives. So you buy a gaming laptop, you're probably going to get a terabyte drive. Imagine a billion of those in that space of that tiny little thing. Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you knew this, if you were an investor, or if you knew this, if you were in a business, you're like, oh, I heard about this. I read it on my Flipboard. And look, all these companies are investing in this little startup called Twist. So Microsoft is buying these customized DNA. The American Film Institute is digitizing all their movies into this customized DNA because they want their movies to last for 1,000 years. And you find out, oh, it's this Twist Biosciences. And, oh, they're going public. I can hop onto the Robinhood app, an app that allows you to buy stocks for free. And I could buy Twist Biosciences. And if you bought it when it went public, you should see what it is now. It's almost triple. It's almost triple. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one way you could profit if you're an investor. But if you're running a business, if you can't see what's coming, why would you plan a business? Why would you do your strategic planning if you didn't know what was coming? So this is what I implore my clients to do. Please, please, please understand what's coming in the future. Plan with using these tools like scenario planning that we can do so much cheaper, so much easier than before, and plan for the future and get a return from it. Plan your preferable future. And whether it's for you as an individual, as a young person, or a business entrepreneur, or an investor, somebody who's retired and just investing, why in the world would you invest if you don't understand how the world is changing? It's crazy.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
And I can believe you on this because I believe you've been talking about Twists for quite a while now with your speeches.
Years. Yes, for years.
Yeah.
I've been tracking it for years. And now go look at the stock price. See how much it's gone up.
I will right after this. Well, do you have any, I've ran out of questions, but do you have any more things you think people, especially young people, should hear about before we end this podcast?
Well, listen, what you have to do is you have to question everything right now, especially for young people. They have to make the decision of whether university is right for them. And for many of them, that's still going to be a yes, because if you're a lawyer or you're a dentist, you're a doctor, you're going to have that university degree. But the most of us aren't going to be those sorts of workers. We're going to be knowledge workers, and we have to know about these things and prepare ourselves for things. And there are more and more online tools for training ourselves for free or for very low cost that can help us completely transform what we do. And there's a great resource on LinkedIn called the Economic Graph. So you go to economic.linkedin.com, economic.linkedin.com, and they're publishing the fastest growing jobs. And the fastest growing jobs are machine learning expert and a data scientist and cybersecurity and a barre instructor. Is it a barre instructor? I don't know. I don't even know what this is.
I don't know what barre is.
Okay, but it's some kind of ballet-based exercise.
Yeah.
But this information comes from LinkedIn. They've got all the data. They know which jobs are growing quickest, right? They can see it. They've got the data. They know which jobs are being advertised and not being fulfilled because they've got these recruiters program and so on. And so they've really got big data. And so they put out a call to economists. They'd come analyze our data. They came up with these lists, and now they're doing by country the fastest growing jobs. And half of them are these technology jobs, right? But you might say, I'm a young person and I'm not really good with technology. I don't care. Twist Bioscience, they have a chef in their cafeteria. They have a shipping guy shipping their DNA samples. They got a marketing team. They got a sales team. They got operations team. They got a legal team. They got all these teams. So even if you don't want to be the technologist, you could be working for this great company in some other area, but you might not even know who that company is if you don't look at what's out there. What are the fastest growing jobs, and then which companies are hiring? And then you say, well, I'm a world-class barista. Well, I'm telling you, the people at Twitter want world-class baristas, right? And wouldn't you like to work for them, right?
Absolutely.
So don't say, well, I'm not a technologist, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a coder. Just what the World Economic Forum says is that these startups, they talk about them as startups, are the early warning system for the next economy. That you can look at these startups and the sort of an early warning of what the new economy is going to be like. And they're growing faster than ever before. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a little startup that through trials and tribulations have now been through a founder being thrown out and some lawsuits being thrown one way or another, but finally 3 ex-BMW executives have created a Netflix for electric vehicles. So imagine where you pay a monthly subscription and it gives you access to electric cars, EVs, electric vehicles, electric bikes, scooters, planes, whatever. You pay a monthly fee and you go to your phone, you say, I want my electric car, please. Electric car drives up by itself. You pop in and off you go. And just this week, this company that's called Canoo, CANOO, was just funded for $1 billion. $1 billion. I mean, it used to be that a really big venture round was $250 million. These guys just got $1 billion. And they're not shipping a product until 2021. I mean, this is a world that we're living in now. Yeah. And in a few years' time, we're going to have an app on our phone. I know it for sure. And you're just going to order the car. It's going to arrive. You're going to drive it off. And when you're done, it's going to drive off and serve the next customer. It's inevitable. Yeah. Every car company in the world, I was just in Las Vegas in January. Every car company was there. All the car companies were all about this self-driving, multi-use platform that electric vehicles, it's like a skateboard. You can put different designs on the top. Every car company is going in this direction, and Ford and all the others are selling some cars in between now, but they're rapidly moving towards being transport companies, not being car companies. You know these Lime scooters that we've got in the cities? I don't know if you've seen them electric.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
So these Lime scooters and Lime bikes, Ford has invested in them hundreds of millions of dollars because they see it's one of the solutions for having better cities. So you just got to follow these trends and say, look, I'm going to be living in the future, hopefully. I'm going to be living in the future. I need to engage with the future. I have to understand. I have to know first. I have to take action. I have to do something. It's not just knowing about it. And from that, I can profit. And we can profit in many ways. Profit just from the knowledge, profit from benefiting the world, profit from your career, profit from investing or running your business. And so that's what I'm saying to young people now. Focus on the future. I think H.G. Wells was right. Every single university should have had a futurology department, but very few do. Very few do.
Yeah, that's Well, that's a lot to unravel for my listeners today.
Sorry.
No, that's excellent. I'm so thankful for you having me. I think that's all we have for today. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And yeah, listen, if anybody would like to get more information, they can find me on my website, futuretrendsgroup.com. And I've got an ebook there on how to think like a futurist, goes into more detail of how to think like a futurist. Yeah.
Okay, that was the whole Craig Rispin podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I had to cut it off there because we said a few more words, but I couldn't speak very well, so I just ended it there. I was so thankful to have him on. Check out the show notes below for more detail on everything. Go check out Craig Rispin's website and his book. Again, please consider subscribing and coming back next week for the next episode. And that should be all. Thank you very much. See ya.